And I was able to take him from just getting by to about 16 million a year in annuity premium. I did work with one advisor. She had about 12 million of AUM on the books, and she's currently at about 118 million of AUM just by implementing the process that we're already doing. There is nothing that any of our team is doing that I haven't done first. I'm a big believer in lead by example. And so everything we've done in the past, everything we're currently doing, I will always test it first. No one is delivering data to me that's as thorough and detailed as you. And that's okay, it's good to know. And there's always a fine line between not enough information and too much.
Welcome to the show, everyone. Today, I'm excited to have Scott Harrison with me, a leader in the financial services industry with over 33 years of experience. Scott has built an incredible system for helping advisors grow their business, and he's here to share his journey with you guys and how he leads by example and why his mentorship could be a game changer for your business. So Scott, thank you for joining us today.
Hey, good morning. Thank you.
All right. So Scott, let's start with your journey. You've been in the industry for over 3 decades and you've helped a lot of advisors scale their businesses. Can you share with us how you got started and what's kept you going all these years?
Sure. Yeah. So I was originally licensed in March of 1991, and I spent a very long time working in a very large, well-known career system. I went up from agent to sales manager all the way up to regional manager, and I was there for quite some time, almost 20 years. And eventually I reached a point where I wanted to branch out and go independent, as they say. And so we eventually did that. We formed our current firm that we have now quite some time ago. And since then, I've been able to carve out my niche working with existing advisors that are already pretty good and getting them to the next level. So the old good to great adage.
Got it. And in your career, you've worked with some of the top advisors in the business, transforming their results. Can you give us a few examples of those advisors? And you don't have to mention their exact names, but like from here to here, what does that mean in the past?
Yeah, I've seen advisors that are, doing $1 million or $2 million in annuity premium. I've seen advisors doing zero. I've worked with advisors that were already doing 5 or 6. So there are quite a few different scenarios. Probably a good one that comes to mind is an advisor I've worked with for quite some time, probably about 9 years now, who had been in the business for a while, was moderately successful, and I was able to bring him into a system that we were already running, a process, if you will, that we're already running. And I was able to take him from just getting by to about 16 million a year in annuity premium. And then he brought in someone else, a family relative, who was starting from a standing start, and we were able to get him up to 10 million in annuity premium within about 3 years for him. So again, that's been my niche, is getting folks from here to there. And I could also add to that there is nothing that any of our team is doing that I haven't done first. I'm a big believer in lead by example. And so everything we've done in the past, everything we're currently doing, I will always test it first. I will run it first. And once I get it dialed in, then we'll roll it out to the rest of our team.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you about next. Is the one thing that really stands out about your leadership style is that you never ask your advisors to do something you haven't done yourself. Right. So how does this lead by example approach, build trust and lead to success for the advisors you work with?
Yeah, I think it's a pretty significant credibility issue because anyone who's been in the business for any amount of time knows there are plenty of people out there willing to teach you or show you how to do something that they've never done themselves, which is a bit funny if you ask me, but that's not me, or that's not how we work. And so when I'm talking to an advisor about doing something, making a change to what we're already doing or bringing in something new, they already know I've done it first. And if they're not sure, if it's something they want to adapt, they can come watch me do it. They can see me do it. We can do some joint work together. They can simply sit off to the side and watch me run whatever it is we're talking about. And so I think it builds significant credibility. It certainly has for us. And with our advisors, we're a very, very tight group. And I think the mutual respect goes both ways. But leading by example is just a phrase, but actually doing it, and advisors being able to see someone like myself actually running what I'm suggesting they consider running, I think it's pretty darn important.
Got it. You've had some great success growing advisors like Mark from about $1 million to 15 million a year in annuities, okay, and Brian from $5 million to $28 million in AUM. Can you walk us through how you helped them achieve that growth, and what was your role? What was your role, your personal involvement played out?
Yeah, so my role is vetting whatever it is, the process or the marketing system that we're doing, and then creating and vetting the process. Getting a client to the table isn't always that difficult, but then where do you go from there, right? And so for us, whether an advisor is building AUM or they're building annuity premium, the process is the same. And so our process is fairly unique because it's us and it's something that we've created and developed over many, many years. And so we all run the same process, and I run point on the process and my support team runs point on the process. So all the way from sitting down with a client, the introduction, all the way to getting business done. And it's pretty comprehensive. We look at the big picture. We look at obviously building the nest egg, distribution on the nest egg, taxes, inflation, estate planning, all the above. So all these elements are baked into our process, which is what makes it easier for us to gather AUM. I did work with one advisor not that long ago. She had about 12 million of AUM on the books. This was back in 2017, and she's currently at about 118 million of AUM just by implementing the process that we're already doing. We found over the years, everyone's different. Advisors are different. The process is pretty consistent. It's pretty much the same. And the advisors have the opportunity to plug how they do business into the process. And it's a big part of why we've been as successful as we've been.
Yeah, that is a life-changing growth from under 20 million of AUM to over 100 million. Yeah, she must be doing
She's
great.
a very sharp person, so I can't take all the credit. She's very sharp. But yes.
That's great. In the industry, you have a lot of advisors that join IMOs and they hop from IMO to IMO, trying to look for like the silver lining. And the thing with IMOs is, they're great at, being the wholesaler of annuities. And they have a lot of people teaching strategies they might never have actually implemented themselves. How does your approach differ from that? And why is real world experience so important when mentoring advisors?
I think we've all experienced a version of what you just outlined there. I mean, IMOs have their purpose, they have their place, and they can bring significant value for certain parts of the business. But when it comes to growing an advisor, developing an advisor and or their business, I don't know. I think it's really hard to learn from someone who hasn't done it. I just don't think there's a proper connection there. And so we work with multiple IMOs and they have their place. They bring value to our business for sure. But actually showing us how to implement a process, I've yet to come across a wholesaler that's been able to do that effectively. And that's fine because we don't need that. We do everything in-house. We've got a pretty robust support team internally, and that's by design. That's on purpose. We don't want to be in a position where we're reliant on someone else. We do everything A to Z, from taking applications to processing business to getting it done to getting it placed. All the processes that we've been talking about, we do it all in-house just because it gives us better control and it brings significant value to the advisors we work with as well.
Got it. And just to clarify, this is not an opportunity to work for Scott. You're not going to lose your independence. You're still going to keep your independence, but be in more of a supportive system as far as I understand it, so that all you're doing is what you're best at, which is talking to prospects, getting them to decide that this is what they want to do. And then everything after the decision point is taken care of for you, the follow-up and everything. Is that about right?
Yeah, that's spot on. And I can add to that is none of the advisors on our team, if someone were to go to our website and see some information on the advisors we're working with or the advisors on the team, no one is captive. Anyone can leave anytime they want. This is a gentleman's agreement, for lack of a better phrase. And as long as we're able to bring value, people don't leave. And quite frankly, our retention is pretty strong. Advisors just don't leave because we actually deliver what we commit to deliver. And so, like I said earlier, we've got a pretty tight team. No one's captive. Anyone can come and go as they please. It's been a good relationship for us both ways for a very long time.
Got it. So when somebody joins your system, let's talk about your system. When a new advisor joins your program, let's talk about what the process looks like. Let's walk people through the steps from learning the content to eventually running things on their own. What I had written down before from a prior conversation is step 1 is to learn the system, shadow on live calls, do the weekly roundtable meetings with all the advisors. Step 2 is to kind of do it together. And step 3 is for them to do it themselves. Can you just give us a little bit more detail on that?
Yeah, there are minor variations on that depending on the advisor, but generally speaking, and when I say we, I really mean me, because if I'm bringing in someone else or someone decides they want to work jointly with the team and myself, then we're going to decide what that looks like. So is it watch me do the things I'm suggesting you may want to do, or is it let's do it together until we reach a point where you've got to dial it in and you don't need me anymore? So there are variations on that, but the process itself is the same. It's just how we implement the process that can vary depending on the advisor, what degree of assistance they need or support they need, or what they want to do initially or what they don't want to do initially, right? So it's fairly open, but the process, again, our steps are the same regardless.
Got it. And you mentioned that advisors can learn content very quickly, sometimes in as little as an hour, and feel comfortable with it. You also told me that it's not the presentation you guys offer is not like just a standard two bucket approach to retirement planning. What makes your system so easy to implement, and how do you ensure that advisors differentiate themselves when they meet with clients?
Yeah, I think common sense is really kind of a key word. I've said for many, many years, I don't think we're doing anything that's earth shattering. I think we do the basics really, really well. And that shouldn't make us different, but it does. It shouldn't, but it does. And so again, we cover all of the things that any particular prospect or potential prospect would want to cover, right? We just hit on the things that matter. And there's an old saying, make it make sense. And so common sense is probably the biggest driver. I know that's somewhat of a gray response to that. But our process, again, is really simple. It's gathering data, determining what the client wants to do, and then how you deliver the results, how you deliver the suggestions. Here's the path that makes sense for you. Here's why we make it makes sense for you based on what it is you told us. And then we start to build out from there. We always say that the first draft of a financial plan is never the final draft, because we want our clients involved in the process, as opposed to here's what you told me, here's what I'm suggesting. Now let's spend the next 20 minutes trying to convince you to follow what we've suggested. That's not how we work. And again, it shouldn't be unique, but it is.
Got it. You also mentioned in person. So there's an option for some advisors, if they can, if they want to come and spend a couple of days with you in person for training, I think in Seattle or Vegas. Can you share why this face-to-face approach can be so effective, and what can advisors expect during these in-person sessions?
In this day and age, you can accomplish a lot with Zoom, right? And, I'm kind of an old school guy. I've been around a while, and I like the face-to-face. And I think it's any opportunity we have to get face-to-face to talk about these things that are really, really important. I think it's a good idea. And so we have our primary office in Seattle where we started. I am in Nevada here. We also have an office in Colorado. So wherever it makes sense for an advisor to come sit down face to face and spend a day or two, I think it's just a good idea. And if it's to work with me directly, I'm in Seattle probably once a quarter. I'm not up there that often anymore, but that's where our hub is. That's where the support staff and our primary office is. So if someone wanted to work with our firm and they wanted to get face to face with me, we could arrange something here in Nevada, in Vegas, where I am. And again, it's not expected, it's not required. I just think it's a really good idea.
Got it. And for those advisors that may not have the flexibility for a face-to-face training, for those who can't make it in person, how do you ensure they still get the full benefit of your program?
Just like we're doing now. We can accomplish a lot on Zoom. If it's not practical to get together face-to-face, no worries. We can get a lot done on Zoom. We're doing a fair amount of business these days on Zoom. So we have that dialed in. It is a bit of a learning curve, but we have it dialed in now. And so that's certainly fine if face-to-face doesn't make sense.
Got it. And let's talk about some results. So you've been using our program, and you've been helping one of your advisors with some joint work over the past 30 days. And over the past 30 days alone, you guys have onboarded 7.7 million of new assets, 3.1 million annuity business, and 4.6 million in AUM. Is that about right?
That's spot on. Yes, that's in the past 30 days. Correct.
So what's the secret sauce? How are you able to onboard so much new assets in such a short period of time?
What I'm seeing, and this is all done virtually, by the way, through working with you, Alex, which has been a great experience. Again, doing the basics really, really well and listening, and then having a program that outlines a lot of detail, a lot of specifics. That's how, and I know that's a bit gray, but our process is simply that. And that is what is differentiating us from others, because when we're talking to these clients, particularly on these Zoom meetings, we're asking, what are you hearing elsewhere? What are you hearing from other advisors? Because typically if they're meeting with us, they're also meeting with others, and that's perfectly fine. Or they have an existing advisor, which is pretty normal as well. So we're always asking, okay, why are we talking today? What are you missing? What have you heard from others that resonated, that you liked? What have you heard that you didn't like? And we gather all that data. And what we found is, again, everything I've talked about now, how we do things is different. And it shouldn't be, but it is. And so I think that's differentiating us pretty quickly from what they're hearing. And I've had multiple clients say, no one is doing what you guys are doing, or at least not doing it the way you're doing it. And it kind of surprises me. I don't understand why everybody isn't doing it the way we're doing it. So it is somewhat unique, which is good for us, I suppose. But that's been the secret sauce, if you will, is following our roadmap. Because I said before, our process is the same. Whether you're doing in-person workshops, whether you're marketing via Zoom, even if you're working with referrals, it's the same process, right? And it is somewhat comprehensive. We tend to move slowly and carefully, which is why we're able to see larger cases and why we're capturing AUM. There's one circumstance, one client in the last 30 days that we did not do any annuity at all. Zero annuity, about 900,000 in AUM, because it just made sense. And the client's a bit younger as they age. I think there is an annuity, certainly for income in the future. But our system isn't driven to drive annuity sales. It's not just driven to drive AUM. It's designed to drive all of the above.
Got it. I think something you mentioned that was very powerful is that advisors, they might be great salespeople, but maybe they're not the most organized when it comes to operating a business, which is what you're doing when you're solo. You're not in a career system. So what you're kind of bringing to the table is advisors are not organized. You help them get organized. You do the organization for them so that they just focus on meeting with clients, closing deals, and then everything else that's around that is non-revenue producing is taken care of for them. Is that about right?
Yeah. And I think that's a fairly significant value add that we bring to the table for all the advisors we work with again, I've been around a while and I've seen advisors that are really, really good sitting in front of clients talking about planning, and they're terrible business people with all due respect. They just are. And most of them know that. And so for us, as I mentioned before, our infrastructure is really important because most of the better producers, at least that I've seen, aren't good business people. So we want to get some of that stress, some of that work off the table to allow them to focus on what they do best, right? All the way from, we have teams that will actually take the applications. They'll do the paperwork. You just set up the meeting or the Zoom with your client, and we know what's taking place because we've designed the plan already, and then we'll get the applications taken. We'll follow them all the way through A to Z. We don't rely on IMOs for business processing and or follow-up. We do it all in-house all the way through. And then beyond that to annual reviews. Our team helps build the plans initially. We do the follow through on the plans, years 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, et cetera. So we provide significant infrastructure at no additional cost. It's just baked into our business model for what we do. And so that has significant value. I hear it all the time because the advisors tell me. They really appreciate that. And that's a big part of it because marketing is certainly important, but the infrastructure, the back office, I would argue is equally important, at least down the road.
Yeah, definitely. We can get you all the appointments in the world, but you gotta take care of business. So business taken care of.
Absolutely.
And when I was going through your website and your team, you guys have a pretty solid team of CFPs, MBAs, ex JP Morgan advisors, ex Morgan Stanley advisors. These are some really credible advisors that chose to join your firm, not really a firm, but partner up with you and your team. I'm looking at the success stories. You've taken Mark from $1 million a year to over $15 million a year, and his relative did 10 million a year as well. You've taken Rick from $1 million to $6 million a year, Brian from 5 million AUM to 28 million AUM, and also 7 million a year in annuity business. You mentioned you took Chuck from life/mortgage leads to 4 to 5 million a year in annuity premium. Are those pretty accurate? And any other success stories?
Yeah, no, those are spot on. And the individual from 12 million in AUM to north of 100, about 118 million in AUM as well.
That's awesome. And you're able, from the way I see it, is you're able to do this because you basically were a sales manager, I guess, right? At the previous career system. You were taking care of advisors, about 155 agents to help them increase production. So what you're doing now is just, a smaller, more focused version of what you were doing at that career system. And it's more productive for sure.
Certainly. Yeah. I think that's a fair way to frame it. As I mentioned before, I worked in the career system. At our peak, we had just north of 155 agents. And I had 7 sales managers under me. We had support staff. We had multiple offices. So I was running that system, but I was always hands-on. I think it's just the way I'm wired. And so even back then, I was probably doing more than I should have. I've always been involved. I like to be involved in the day-to-day as far as what's happening between the advisors and the clients. And so it was an easy transition for me. It was just taking what I was doing there at a high level and dialing it down to more concentrated people. Because anybody who's been in the business a while, as I said before, you can imagine 155 agents, that's a lot of work. And typically, there's an old saying that, 80% of your production comes from 20% of your team. In the career system, I think that certainly holds true. So our focus is not having quantity of advisors, it's quality of advisors. So we have no desire to ever have 155 advisors. I just don't. That's too much work. For us, it's more enjoyable to work with just a few good advisors.
Got it. So the program is customized, but you guys know the three steps: learn the system, do it together, do it yourself. Very hands-on. You don't sacrifice your independence. You work with Scott, and Scott's, has been able to produce a lot through our program. So for the advisors who are listening or interested in working with Scott, there should be a button or a link around this video to apply. You're going to be able to fill out an application form. Your application will go to Scott, and then you'll be able to book a meeting to talk to Scott to discuss what would that fit mean for you specifically. It's not like a cookie cutter program. It depends on the advisor, their level, where they are, where they want to be. And that's kind of how it's structured. Is that about right, Scott?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Scott, you also wanted to talk about how working with us has changed your business and your experience with that. So tell people about what it's been like so far.
Yes, absolutely. And again, as I mentioned before, I've been around a while, and anyone who's been in the business a while, there are so many different marketing forms, different ways to get prospects to the table, so to speak, right? And plugging in to your system, Alex, has been a bit of a game changer for a lot of different reasons. The quality of the prospects that we're seeing is as expected, as you told us it would be. The quality is there, that the folks are legitimately interested in financial planning. And so it's one of the other things I like about this, beyond the obviously the quality of the clients, is you can turn on a dime. If you want to be busier, you can simply commit more marketing dollars. If you want to dial it back, you want to go to Europe for a month, just shut down the marketing, then turn it back on when you come back. And we all know with running, the various in-person workshops, you need 6 weeks of lead time. You're working in the evenings, this, that, and the other. And I'm a bit of a number cruncher, and I've run the numbers 100 ways backwards and forwards. And it always comes down to net cost per client acquisition. This is very efficient in a lot of ways. And I think this is not just the future, it's now, but it is also the future. And so plugging into your system that we've done, and then bringing in our infrastructure and our process married up to your system, I think it's a winning combination. And we've spent a fair amount of time, as you know, Alex, over the past several months, and we've spent over $100,000 getting this dialed in to a point to we're now comfortable rolling it out to other advisors on our team. And then we're open to entertaining speaking with other advisors outside of our team, because now we've got this dialed in.
Got it. Let me double click on a couple of those points. You said the prospects are of high quality. To better illustrate that, you mentioned in the last 30 days, you brought on 7.7 million of new assets. How many new clients was that?
That was only 6 clients. And so with just 6 clients, we brought in, north of 7.5 million, all in with AUM and annuity premium. And we track everything from A to Z. So we track our average AUM, we track our average annuity premium, and all the above. And so at the moment, our average annuity premium is just barely north of 600,000 per annuity case. And the AUM is on average over $1 million in AUM. And we're bringing both of those in simultaneously. So, and I can give you some numbers on the last, I made some notes here prior to our discussion today on the last 5 appointments that I have seen, as far as, let me grab my notes here. And these are just appointments. These aren't closed clients, but to give you some examples of what we're seeing. So the last 5 we see, these are appointments I ran myself with a co-advisor. 2 million, 2.9 million, 720,000, 2.1 million, 810,000. So there's our last 5 appointments as far as investable assets that we have to work with. And we'll see what happens, right? Fingers crossed. But that's a pretty good representation of what we've been seeing. As far as, number one, there is actually something there to work with, and they are legitimately interested in working with someone, right? It's just up to us to separate ourselves from the pack, and why should they work with us, right? And all advisors have that challenge.
Got it. When you say they're legitimately interested in financial planning, what do you compare that to? Have you had people in the past come to want to talk to you that were not interested, that using other lead programs? How do you define that quality?
Yeah, I call it kicking the tires, right? We've been running in-person workshops for a very, very long time, all the way from the dinner workshops to the community colleges. We've been running at community colleges for about 12 years now. The filters aren't perfect when you run those workshops, and all people know what I'm talking about. You'll get people who will book appointments who have less than $100,000 in investable assets, and they'll just eat up your time. We have other people who are just come in, no, just kicking the tires, just want to see what you're all about, right? And so we tend to see, or at least so far we've seen, a little bit less of that. The filters, the investable asset filters, are working. It's rare that we see somebody under 500,000. We have, but that's pretty rare. We've seen people, north of 10 million. That's not uncommon either. But when I say they're legitimately interested, when we're talking about, and again, it's easy to weed them out fairly quickly on the front end. What exactly are you looking to accomplish? Why are we here? You already have an advisor. You're talking to other advisors. That's all good stuff. What's up? What do you want to talk about? Well, here's what I want to do. Why? Well, here's why I want to do it. And so what we're seeing by being fairly direct and blunt, we're kind of getting to the core of it pretty quickly. And we are seeing, generally speaking, the majority of them are legitimately interested in accomplishing something or getting somewhere, which requires planning and working with someone like us. So that's why I say that.
That's great to hear and great to know that what we're saying on our marketing actually is real.
Yeah, which is refreshing sometimes, right? Because it isn't always when you talk to these folks who have marketing programs put together. This has been impressive. The kind of prospects that have come to the table through your marketing has been impressive, certainly.
Appreciate it. Where do you see the future of this program with us? Besides the advisors joining you and everything, do you see the co-advisor you're working with increasing his production? What's like the next, 6 to 12 months looking like?
Yeah, I think ramping up with what I've seen all the way from marketing dollars spent to the expectations all the way down the line from, the number of appointments that show up, the number that turn into clients, the average premium, the average AUM, all those things. It just seems to me, based on what I know about our guys, and we have some pretty good advisors on the team, it seems to me that somewhere in the range of 9 to 12 million a year in annuity premium is a pretty realistic number based on what I've seen. And we're actually driving towards north of those numbers. So I think those are dialed back a bit. And that's excluding AUM. And for us, the AUM numbers are larger than the annuity numbers. So I think if you've got the right person, or if you are the right person and you have the right process and you're implementing that process in front of the right people, I think it's pretty easy to do. And so going forward, we're starting to roll some of our existing folks into this program, or we will be starting here, beyond myself and our other advisor that we've been testing the program with. So we'll see. I think really, rather than focus on what we can do as a group, we always try to focus on what each individual agent can do, because that's what matters most to them, right? And so I think if someone is doing less than 10 million in annuity premium and you're fine with that, then stay the course. If you would like to do more than that, I think this is a path that I've seen now that works, and it's realistic to drive north of that number.
Sounds great. Any other case study we can cover?
We have met with clients, and I can think of one in particular. We have met with him numerous times. He had met with other advisors numerous times before talking to us and after talking to us. So it's fair. I get it. He's doing his due diligence. And he had said multiple times throughout the process, and he brought it up again when he finally became a client, he said, Scott, he goes, at least in what I've seen, no one is doing what you guys are doing. And I said, so, okay, great, good to hear. But what do you mean by that? And what he told us, he said, no one is as thorough as you guys. No one is delivering data to me that's as thorough and detailed as you. And that's, okay, it's good to know. And there's always a fine line between not enough information and too much, right? And so that's why we're always asking these questions, because there's such thing as information overload, right? But it's always good to hear that. And we hear variations of that quite often is, hey, I've talked to other advisors who are really good people. I like them. But the data you're delivering specific to me is really what I wanted to see. And I'm not seeing that elsewhere. It's good to hear.
So when advisors hear that, if they're considering joining your program, they're going to think, oh, do I have to get my CFP license? Do I have to be super experienced to do this? How streamlined is it to make these thorough plans for these clients, or how much work is it?
That's a very good question. Is at the moment, as long as I have capacity, I overview every single plan that goes out. Every single one. So I am dialed into every single plan. We will often have pre-meeting prep. And so, for example, if an advisor is meeting with Joe client on Thursday and they're not sure how to deliver the content of the plan, or they want suggestions or input, first option is, if I'm available, I can run it with you. And if not, is let's role play it. Let's talk it through. Let me tell you what I see on this particular client's plan and why this makes sense, or here's what you may want to bring up, or if they ask you this is likely your response. So we'll do that case prep in advance, right? And I think that matters. I think that's really, really important. And again, I am dialed into every single one. So as long as I have capacity, I'll continue to do that because I enjoy it. So it's not just, here's a plan, figure it out, and convince the client it's the right plan for them. That's not even close to how we work.
Got it. I'm just going through my notes of like what you've told me advisors love about being part of RH Capital Advisors, which is your firm and your team. What they say is, I just need the client to tell me yes, and I can walk away for a while.
Yeah. Yes, that is a significant value add. So I actually was on a Zoom with an advisor and a client last night. We were getting documents signed. We were walking them through because we prefer to walk them through. We were getting documents signed for their AUM transfer. And then once the money transfers there, then we'll transfer the annuity piece of that puzzle. And so one of our staff members had everything done. Everything was done. They filled out all the DocuSign information for the RIA. They filled out the annuity applications. We just got on the Zoom with the client and said, here's what you do. Click this box, click that box. Everything was done. That's all the advisor had to do. And that's common practice unless there's an advisor who doesn't need that or doesn't want that, which so far that's never happened. But that's how we do things because, again, advisors want simple and want to focus on what they do best. What I've seen, people who are really good at details and really good at paperwork, quite frankly, aren't usually very good advisors. It's just in my experience. The ones who are really good advisors, really good at connecting and delivering plans, quite often aren't that organized. So we try to achieve some balance on their behalf and for us.
Well, another thing you told me that is a great value add is you vet a lot of the opportunities that advisors have in front of them. You could probably spend $500,000 in marketing on the wrong marketing and not figure it out if you're not very picky and if you don't know what you're doing. So if you told me that if you're an advisor with a license, you're getting bombarded with opportunities, through Facebook, through Instagram, through conferences, from your IMO, from in your email inbox, everybody's trying to get you to do something different than what you're doing and promising you the world. So what you guys do is you vet the opportunities, and you told me, Scott, if it's a mistake, I've already made it.
Yeah, I've said that for years, and it's unfortunately true. There are so many different marketing opportunities, and so many of them are just complete nonsense. And so I've told advisors over the year, because everyone's independent, right? All of our team is independent. They can do whatever they want, whenever they want. Say, look, if you're looking at something, run it by me. There's a very good chance if it's a mistake, I've already made it. And that's kind of my line on that one. And it's true. And because unfortunately, I've seen advisors say, I'm going to start doing this. I already have some experience with that. What did you pay them? Yes. Oh, okay. Well, let's see how that plans out. So again, that's the advantage of time. I've been around so long, and I'm always looking, how can I improve things for the firm and for our team members, right? So I'm always looking at opportunities. I always joke, I'll listen. Doesn't mean who knows if I'll like what you say, but I'll listen. And so I am kind of the filter out the nonsense marketing because there's so much of it out there, right? So yes, I guess that's probably another value add as well, if you want to look at it that way. Sure.
Yeah. And you mentioned you keep advisors focused. You don't let them get distracted. You have advisors that are doing one thing today and tomorrow they want to run seminars and they want to do webinars. They want to get on radio. Funny thing, I listened to a Rick Edelman interview today, and he said he built his business off of radio and seminars. And he said, if you're trying to do what I did, don't. Yes. He said it in a funny way. He said, it's not because you're not as good as Rick. He said, you're probably not. But he said the environment is different now. And, when he got on radio, it was not really regulated. They didn't have compliance approve everything. It was a different world. And he said seminars are completely different now. So he said, probably not the road you want to take. And you want to look at somebody who's, not a Rick Edelman, who's at $250 billion or $300 billion in AUM. You want to have somebody who's accessible, will give you time, somebody who's not 100 times above where you're at, but just above that, they can give you the time to go from, I don't know, $1 million or $2 million or $3 million or $4 million a year in annuity production to 10 or 20 million a year in annuity production, and they can help you do that. And what you guys do, as you mentioned, is you try to help them from getting distracted, keep them focused on what's working and keeping on doing the same thing and working it until it no longer works. Is that about right? Yeah,
that's spot on. The landscape is constantly changing. And I agree with what you just mentioned there. Back in the day, radio, it was a lot cheaper than it is now. It was a bit more efficient than it is now. TV, a lot of folks run on TV, and that's fairly expensive. We've explored all of these things before. I've had advisors run radio. And at the end of the day, what I've seen, particularly recently, because the landscape has changed, is, advisors like the way it makes them look. Look at me, I'm on the radio. Look at me, I'm on the TV. Okay, how much did you spend? What's your net result? I mean, that's pretty expensive because it all comes down to cost per client acquisition, right? Isn't that what pays the bills? Again, that landscape has changed significantly. It's a very crowded space. It's becoming less and less efficient, at least what I've seen over the past 6-7 years. So if someone had X amount of dollars allocated to marketing and they were looking at radio and or TV versus many other options that are available, my suggestion is table that and maybe look at something that's going to be more efficient. You can do whatever you want. It's your business. It's your money. But back to what we talked about before with vetting marketing programs and our experience and what we've seen, I agree with what apparently Rick Edelman said in the interview you watched today. I think that landscape has changed dramatically, and it's not something I would recommend for a new advisor breaking into that space now.
I think the biggest value add is when you're an advisor and you're working remotely, especially, it might sometimes feel like you're like on an island. You're just alone at your desk working. There's nobody there. There's nobody that's telling you what to do. You're your own boss. It's a blessing and a curse sometimes.
Yeah.
But with this program, you're telling advisors, hey, like, we're going to be here for you. We're not going to be telling you what to do, but we'll keep you focused. We'll give you basically a business model and a business plan, and we'll help you go from here to here, whatever that means for you. Within about 3 to 4 months, if you'd like your pace to be 9 to 12 million a year in annuity production, this might be a good option to explore, to at least talk to Scott to see if you guys will be a good fit to work with each other. I think that's a transformation, is to go from being not really confident, roller coaster months. Some months you're, doing $1 million or $2 million in annuity production. Some months you're doing nothing. Every 3 months or so, you're changing lead vendors, you're changing marketing systems, you're changing how you're getting clients. You're trying to find something you can stick with. You haven't found it yet. It's because you haven't found the right kind of mentor or team that can, just say, hey, we've wasted, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of dollars on marketing that works and stopped working, that no longer works, that used to work, that never works, and what's working right now. Here's what you should do for your specific case. That's what Scott's offering here. Is that about right?
Spot on. I would agree. Yes.
I think that's the biggest value add, is when you're your own boss, nobody tells you what to do. And sometimes you don't know what to tell yourself what to do. So it helps to have somebody kind of coach you and not be your boss, but be, kind of like partner that doesn't take up any rev share or anything like that. The way you guys are structured, you're perfectly aligned with the advisor. But you're not taking rev share. You're basically getting paid the more they produce. So you're perfectly aligned to have them do what's in their best interest, because it is in your best interest as well. And in the client's best interest, of course.
Yeah, I think alignment's really important. And I think that's what you're referencing there is look, all the advisors on our team, the better they do, the better I do, right? I mean, there's no secret there, right? And, I'm no one's boss. We just simply work together. And so I have a vested interest in people doing well, and I have a limited amount of time. So that's why we've never been looking at bringing on as many advisors as we can, because someone is going to stick. Someone's going to be okay. That's a lot of work, and there are limited hours in the day, and that is in no way our model. So I can't tell you over the years how many folks have approached us and we've said, I wish you the best, but it's not a good fit. So, which is very different than when the IMO recruiter calls you, right? You've got a license and a pulse, sign here, right? That's not at all how we work. I have no interest in that.
I think that's a breath of fresh air for a lot of advisors. They're going to see the boutique experience you guys are offering them. Anything else we should share with people?
I think we've covered a fair amount today.
Okay, well, if you guys are interested, click the button, apply, and Scott will reach out to you guys to schedule an interview. You'll probably be able to book a call with him through his calendar, and you guys can chat and see if this is a good fit for both of you. So guys, if you're interested, just click the button around this video, up, down, somewhere around the video to apply. Scott, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Your track record, hands-on approach, and results speak for themselves. So I'm sure advisors listening today will be eager to learn more. Thanks again for sharing your insights with us.
Oh, thank you.